Now what we're going to do is we will start creating our widget. Okay. Alright, so as you can see, we have already registered our sidebar over here, so we don't have to do this step. And we have also created our sidebar.php. This was the third step. The third step has already been taken care of, and I've explained that in the previous video. And then this sidebar.php, we are including that inside of the single.php. So this is the place where we're calling the get sidebar, including that template, so the sidebar will be included, and then we can add the widgets once we want. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we'll basically create a class, and we'll name it as class clock widget. So we're going to create a widget to display the time, clock widget. Okay, and inside of this clock widget, the first thing I'm going to do is just copy the class, another class, into this so that I don't have to type all of this. And I'm going to get rid of these functions, get rid of this content, so I have like kind of a boilerplate to start with. And then for this, we'll go ahead and name it as clock widget, and that's it. And now let's go back and check how do we register it. Okay, so let's take a look. So here is how it looks like, right? It says class, the name of your class, your custom class. So I'm going to do that. So the name of my custom class will be clock and then underscore widget. So I'll say clock underscore widget extends, because I want to extend the WP widget class, which is this. So let's do that. And of course, since you are using inside of the class, I would rather put a use over here. Use WP widget. Okay. And I just want to show you how it looks like, this WP widget. Okay, so take a look. I've gone to the definition. I've gone to the definition of this class, but if you want, you can just search it in your file, WP widget. So you can see that this is the WP widget base class, and it's a core WordPress class that is extended, which means that is used to extend the widgets and add our own custom widget. Okay, so if you take a look, it says that widget function must be overridden, which means that there could be a possibility where you don't want to take any inputs from the backend. You just want to display something. So if you just want to display something, then you can just use this widget function. You can just override that. But in case if you're adding the widget options like explains here, then in that case you would need to override the update function as well as the form function. And the form function is responsible for the form that you see in the backend. So let me give you an example. Let's go to appearance and let's go to widgets. And let's take a look at this one. So the form that you see over here, the title, the taxonomy, all of that, these are like default WordPress widgets. This form, whatever content you put inside of this function is going to show over here, and whatever content you put inside of widget function is going to be showing in the front end or under that widget. Okay, so it's just saying that if you want those options, if you want that forms, etc., then you have to override these functions. Okay, so take a look. You've got like ID base, name, options name, all of that. So you can explore more about this, and this is the function that you need to override. This is update function, form function, construct function, right? And so you can go into the depth and understand what's going on if you want, but yeah, this is the basics of it. All right, so since we've got the information about our WP widget, we can continue further. Okay, so what does it say into the documentation of WordPress? It says that you need to create all of these functions. So I'm going to go ahead and check an example because I don't want to spend too much time in typing. So I'll just take an example of the code from here. So I'll go ahead and copy this. Okay, so let's paste this here. Awesome. So now I'll explain to you what's happening step by step. So first we have the construct function. So take a look. So construct function sets up your widget with a description, name, and display the width in your admin. So this is my constructor function. I don't want to name it as foo widget. I would probably call it the clock widget because that's what the widget is, right? So it's a clock widget. So it talks about that this is the base ID. Then what is the name you want to be displayed in the WordPress backend, which means what is the name that you want here for this widget. So I'm going to name it as clock. That's it, right? Then it talks about what is the description. So I will say clock widget. And then it's asked you for text domain. So I'm going to replace all of the text domain in wherever place it's been described. So I'll make it as Aquila, and I'm going to change them all at once together. Coming back over here, I don't want this to be like using array keyword. I'll just use this curly braces for array. Okay, awesome. So this is the information that goes in the construct, and it sets up your widget and description. Yep, that's exactly what it's doing. It's calling the parent class. So this is our parent class, just for your information, WP widget. So it's calling the parents construct inside of the parent construct method. So if you check, where is my construct method? Construct. Yep. So if you take a look at the WP underscore widget class, it asks for all of these parameters. It asks for ID base, which is what we passed over here, right? Clock widget, that's my base ID. Then it asks for the name of the widget, so we pass the name, which is clock, and then it asks for the widget options in form of an array. So I pass the widget options in form of an array. This is an array, and I pass the description. And then there's another option again, which is optional. So you can see that even the widgets option is optional, so it's up to you whether you want to pass the widgets option and control options or not. But yeah, I've just added the description for it. But if you want more options, you can simply come in over here and pass them. Okay, great. Okay, let's go on to the widget function. Okay, so what does the widget function do? So widget function processes the widget options and display HTML on your page. So like I said, this is the function that's responsible of what you see onto the front end, right? So it takes argument parameters, provides the HTML, you can display the widget, title class, widget content class, etc. So let's take a look. What does it take? So I'm going to go to the widget function inside of the WP widget class, and let's see what it gives me. Yep, here's the widget function. So it takes the argument and the instance. So in the arguments, you can pass before title. So in the arguments, you have the before title and after title available. Now what is this before title and after title? So if you remember from my previous videos, if you go on to the sidebars, in register sidebar, you can pass something like before title and after title as parameters. So let me show you an example. So let's go to our front end, and if you take a look at this widget, which is WordPress default widget, so you can see that it's wrapping the text widget, which is the title, with the h3 tag with the class of widget title, and that's what's happening here. So this is what is being passed. This is what the meaning of this before title and after title is. Now before we continue further, I think the best thing we can do is register this widget so that we can go ahead and see what's happening step by step, right? So what we're going to do is we'll go on to the class sidebar, because that's the best place to register your widget. So I'll do add action. I'll just repeat this. So if you take a look, you need to hook it to the inits hook. So that's what I'm doing. I'm hooking it to the inits hook, and then I'm calling a custom function. So let me create one. So register clock widget. Okay, register clock widget, and then I'm just going to define this function here. Function register clock widget, and this will be public function. Even if you don't add public over here, it by default understand that it's public. And then you just need to call this function, which is register widget. And of course, the widget name in our case is clock widget. So I'll put clock. So what was the name? Let's go on top. This is the name of the class. So you need to put the class name. So I'm going to put clock widget. Now the thing is that there's a namespace that we are using. So all we have to do is just prefix it with the namespace. So this is our namespace for the clock widget. We'll come back over here and just prefix it. And how do I know this needs to be done? Well, I know it out of practice, but also because WordPress explains that over here. So you can see that WordPress org says that if you have a namespace, you just need to prefix it with the namespace, like so. Awesome, great. So this means that we should now be able to see our widget onto the backend. There you go. You can see that now we have the clock widget, which wasn't there earlier. And let's add it to the sidebar. So we added that, and now this has been added here, and it says new title and all of that stuff, right? So I'm gonna go on to step by step and tell you what's going on. So starting from just a recap, so we had the construct function. Okay, we gave it a base ID, we give this a clock name. So we gave this the widget name. So notice if I change to clocks, the title is going to change for the widget to clocks. You can see now it's clocks, right? So let's keep it to clock. Okay, and then coming back to the widget, what do we have in the arguments? Let's print it in the args. Okay, now if I go into the front end and if I refresh, and then also you can change the title, make it clock. Okay, now we save it, and now if you go back and refresh, so now if you go to a single post and I refresh, you can see that it says new title, right? It's also a hello world over here, which is again coming from the widget itself, but I will get to that. But you can see that the title is being displayed over here, right? New title. Okay, great. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. So let's go ahead and print these arguments. So it's extracting the arguments that are available in this function. If I refresh that, you can see in the arguments I have the name, which is sidebar, the name of the sidebar, and the ID, which is sidebar 1. So this is just the information about the sidebar. So if you take a look when we registered the sidebar, and this is the name of the sidebar that's being displayed over here. This is the ID of the sidebar, and then the description, class, before widget, after widget, etc. All of that information, right? Okay, great. And it also tells me about the widget ID, which is clock widget 3. Okay, great. And the widget name is clock, so that's the name we gave, right? Widget name is clock. Awesome. So that's what we have in arguments, and then we have the title, and then we are applying filters over here and getting the title. And then whatever is before widget, so as I'd explained to you here, whatever is before the widget over here, okay, is going to be displayed right here, and then whatever is after it, which is this, will be displayed here. I just want to show you that it does happen. So if I refresh, and if I go on to the new title, which is our widget, if I inspect element, if you notice, this div, ID, class, all of that is being displayed over here, right? Awesome. And so that's that, and then it's going to check if the title exists, which means if the user has saved the title or not. Then it's just going to wrap it with before and after title, which is basically this h3 which is title, and then it's just going to echo that title for you. Okay, and then we're just echoing hello world, which I think is not required. We can just get rid of this hello world. We don't want that hello world here. Okay, great. And then I'm just going to refresh it, and now the hello world is gone. And you can also edit the title. Let's say we can change this to clock. Okay, and save it. There you go. You can now see that this is changed to clock, right? Oops, this is clock. And we'll come to that about adding the clock, but just to let you know, that's what's happening over here. And then this is the form that you see. So the form that is being displayed in the backend, this form. So if you inspect element, so this form, so it's going to check if the instance of title exists. Then if it exists, then it's going to set that to the title. Otherwise, it's going to display new title. So I think we can change this to like clock over here rather than new titles. That's where the default new title was coming, because when we didn't type anything, the new title was coming, right? So that's where the default title is coming from. But yes, we can say clock since it's related to clock. Okay, and then it automatically renders the form. Okay, so it's automatically going to display the form, and then the div with the widget content, class, and inside of it, whatever you put like this p tag with the label, and it's just going to get the field name of title. It's going to echo the title for you, and I think this should also have the text domain, which is Aquila. And then this is the label. So this is the label. You can see that it's displaying the widget information, and then you have the input. So this is the input, and inside of this, this is get field ID is going to get the widget ID. Okay, and then inside of the name, you are passing this widget clock, widget 3, all of that. That is coming again from the get field name. And then you have type equals text. Then the value will be the title itself. So in our case, it's clocks. So if we change it to clocks, then of course that value will change to clocks. So if I save it now, and if I refresh, you can see the value is changed to clocks. Okay, so this is basically the form that's actually being displayed in the backend, right? If I add something else to it, like just hello over here, you will notice that you'll be able to see that here. I don't know why you would do that, but just to let you know that that's the content being displayed over here. As you can see that it says hello. Anyways, okay, so that's the form for you. And then finally you have the update function, where the job of this is to update the value inside of the database under the WP options table. So it takes the instance of the array. Again, I will convert this into square brackets, and it takes the instance of the title. If it's not empty, it's going to strip tag, and then finally return the instance. So this is going to update that if the instance is changed, which means if the title is changed and the user has entered a new value, it's going to update that into the database. So I do want to show you where it actually does that, right? So I'm going to go to phpMyAdmin. I will go to my WordPress database, and you need to go to WP options table. Once you go inside of it, then I'm going to click on browse, and then I'll go towards the end. And now you can see the options name is WP clock widget, right? So that's the options name, and this is the value where it's saving the information. So this is a serialized form of array. So WordPress serializes the array. So if I unserialize it, I can do unserialize online, and I can see what does it give me. So let's do that. I'm going to paste it here, and then I'm going to unserialize it. Okay, great. So you can see, what does it save? It says the title, and it says clock, right? Awesome. So that's how WordPress saves it, but that's not what we want, right? We just don't want the title. What we also want is to be able to display the clock, right? So how do we do that? What I'm going to do is basically add a piece of code into our widget function, because that's the function responsible for displaying what you see in the front end, right? So I'm going to come over here and go to my repository, and I'm going to click on Aquila, which is my repository, and this is where you can get the code. I'm going to go to the custom widget branch. So depending on which video you're on, you'll be able to find a relevant branch for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to includes, classes, clock widget, and I'm going to copy this piece of code, which is section. Okay, and I'm going to add that here below this, because it's in HTML I'm writing. I'm just closing and reopening the PHP tag. So what does it do? It's just a section. I'm using a bootstrap class, which is card and card body, and I'm just having the 3 spans. One would contain the time, second would contain the information about whether it's AM or PM, and third one would contain information about third one would actually contain the emoji. And this will all be inserted by JavaScript, because we want to use the set interval function of JavaScript to create a clock using JavaScript. So what we'll do is we'll come back to our main.js, and later on we'll put all of this code in their separate files when we jump onto the Webpack and Babel. but for now we can put it inside of the main.js. So since this is not a JavaScript tutorial, I won't be going into the detail of it. I will just paste the code and then explain it to you, what is going on over there. But if you want to learn more, like if you are a beginner in JavaScript, you can always take my course, which is JavaScript Crash Course. Okay, I'm going to copy this, paste it here, so I'll explain to you what happens. So this is a self-invoking anonymous function inside of which we pass the $, and then we pass Jquery, which means $sign will be equal to Jquery. We create a class of clock, and then we have a constructor which is automatically called when the class is instantiated, and then we create a function called initialize clock, and we just call this function using this keyword. We set interval. Inside of set interval, we go ahead and call this.time function, which has been defined here. After every 1 second, we take the new date, and then we get the seconds, minutes, hours, and then depending on whether the current hour is greater than or equal to 12, we will render PM or AM, and we get the current hour, and then we just do a colon so that we can separate the minutes, seconds, and hours. And then finally we also get the emoji element, which is basically this. We're grabbing hold of this element with the ID over here, and then we're just checking if the current hour is greater than equal to 5 and less than equal to 17. If it is, then it's a daylight, so show this sun, beautiful sun emoji. It's cute, isn't it? Okay, and then otherwise the moon emoji, so it's nighttime. And then we're just grabbing hold of the time and the AM PM elements, which is this time and this AM PM, and just inserting the string time which we have just created on top, which is this one. Okay, and then we're inserting the string time, and we're inserting the AM PM over here, and then over here we're inserting the emojis. That's all we have to do. And then now if you go back and check, what do you expect to see in the front end? Well, you expect to see the clock. Let's see. There you go. Congratulations. So now you have the clock, you've got the minutes, the seconds, and so you've got the hour, the minutes, and the second, and you have the emoji as well. So if you do an inspect element, you can see this is the section that's been inserted. So earlier we only had this widget title with clock. That's what was being displayed. And then later on we added this section inside of the widget function, which is responsible of what you see in the front end. Then you have the ID, and you can see it's flashing, which means JavaScript is inserting the information into it every 1 second, right? So you can see that all is being inserted, right? Okay, awesome. So you've got your dynamic clock rendered over here. Now if you're wondering that why do we not see that clock in the backend like so, the reason for this is because this function is only responsible of displaying what you see in the front end, not backend. Whatever you see in the backend comes inside of the form function. So if you wanted to display the clock inside of the backend as well, then you'll have to add that code here, and also have to include that JavaScript, the main.js for you, because the JavaScript is already included in the front end currently, right? But I see no reason why you would need that. I'm just looking at the convention we have. Look at this tags. You just have in the back end, you only have the information that you want to change, like settings, etc. But in the front end, you have the actual tags being displayed. But in the back end, you don't have those tags. Similarly for calendar, you're not actually showing calendar over here in the back end. You're just showing that in the front end. On the back end, you're just putting those things that are required for the form, like updating the title, etc. And that's what we're doing over here as well. Okay, so it all depends on your need, but this is kind of the convention, and that's what I'm following as well. Okay, awesome, great. Now there's one more thing I'd like to share with you. Now if you're wondering that how did we get hold of the Jquery, so this is the best time to let you know that this Jquery also needs to be passed as a dependency when you are enqueuing that JavaScript. So you need to make sure that inside of the main.js you put Jquery over here as a dependency, so that although I think Jquery is already included, but still to ensure that we don't miss onto this, in the main.js, which is this file right here, make sure you add Jquery as dependency so that this file is included after Jquery is included. Okay, great, awesome. So I hope you did like the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. And do star my repository like this beautiful people who have already starred my repository. Thank you everyone, thank you so much. And if you like my work, do nominate me onto the stars.github.com/nominate for getting the Github Star award, and I would really appreciate that. Okay, awesome. So I think that's about it then, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye bye.